I started work when I was 14. Both my parents worked in the mill, and there was no question of where do you want to go to work. You went in the mill. So I started work in the winding room first, but I didn't like it. And they was building a new ring room. They'd pulled the old mule spinning machines out, and they was putting electric ring spinning machines in. And my mother worked in there, so I asked if I could go and work in there, and she said yes. And that was how I came to go into the ring room.
Right.
And we worked from 7:30 till 5:30. We had an hour at dinner time, and it was 1940 when I started. So there was no canteens then, so you used to go home for your dinner, or some take sandwiches. Eventually they did build a canteen. I think they had to do because of the war and one thing and another. I think we did a 48-hour week altogether. This was at the Junction Mill, and it belonged to the LCC, the Lancashire Cotton Corporation.
Right.
And I was there for 12 years. And I went to the Bay Tree. Now the Bay Tree was one of twin mills. I think the other one was the Laurel. And I was there, and that closed. I was there for 8 years when it closed. And then from there, of course I signed on the dole.
Yeah.
And the dole sent me to Cromer. The Cromer was a single-storied mill. No windows, a glass roof.
Right.
And the machines are very, very close together.
Yeah.
Because you'd like roughly about 30 inches perhaps between the two.
Right.
So you worked in between that, and each side of the frame, the machine, had 250 spindles on it.
Right.
And you either did 4 sides or 5. Some did 6. I had 5. You used to have to do all your own cleaning and keep them clean. My dad worked in the blowing room.
Right.
Which was the beginning of it all.
Yeah, yeah.
But my mother worked in the ring room. And then my brothers came and started work in the mill. But eventually they left. My sister did, but she left after a bit. And
Right.
I was the only one that stayed.
Right.
Yeah. Now that mill was owned by one person, and he was called Mr. Monks. Now there was people worked in that mill, men and women, that had been there from when they left school, and they just left and that was it, nothing. And I always remember one man. He was an overlooker. He wasn't actually the boss of the whole room. He was what they call an overlooker of one section.
Yeah.
And he had his own little cabin. And he'd had the bib and brace overalls, which they wore. Anyway, one night, it said getting ready for coming at home time. At this time, then the hours had shortened. We used to finish then at 4:30.
Yeah.
And he came out, he'd put his tie on, ready to go home. And all of a sudden, he dashed back in and took his tie off. Because Mr. Monks was in the room. As though they were afraid of him, really.
Yeah.
But that was how it was.
Right.
It really was. Altogether, I worked 38 years in the mill, non-stop.
Wow.
Because I didn't have any children.
Yeah.
So I didn't stay off to have children, anything like that.
Right.
No. Well, yeah, I did enjoy it. But it was hard work. But you didn't think of it as hard work then,
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's what you did.
Right.
And there were no strikes or anything like that. Oh, no, you didn't go on strike. Remember one day, and it was very, very hot, And at dinner time, they'd all gone over, across to the canteen. This was at the Cromer. And then they were stood in the yard, and they all said, we're not going back in. You know, it's too hot. It had got really hot.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Monks came. What do you think you're doing? Get back inside. And they all run inside. We never knew the finished result.
Right.
I mean, when I first started work, of course, it had been for the uniforms during the war.
Yeah.
But at the Cromer, like I said, it was owned by one man. Well, near to the end of my time there, they sold it to
Right.
Vantona. But they changed things, and they decided that they would have a committee, and that you'd go into the boardroom every month perhaps, and they'll have a meeting.
Yeah.
So they picked 2 out of each room, and I was one that they picked out of our room.
Right.
So we went and had these meetings, and they decided they would take us to a place in Chinley, and they used to do screen printing there.
Right.
Now that, to me, was really interesting. And they made sheets for Marks and Spencer's.
Right.
And they took us in this room, and they shown us this cloth. And I always remember it was dark brown, because then the fashion was for dark brown sheets. And they were showing us the mistakes in the cloth, which was bad spinning.
Right.
You see, if you let a thick end go through,
Yeah.
it would show on the cloth like a slub.
Right.
That I found very interesting. And I think that's where a lot of the mill owners really went wrong, because we didn't know. And we didn't have a weaving shed at the Cromer.
Yeah.
They had a winding and doubling,
Right.
but they didn't have the weaving. You tipped your wages up to your parents, or to your mother,
Right.
and you got 2 shillings spending money, that's all. When I first started, my wage was 12 shillings a week. And this was in the winding room. But the winders used to make their own wage. Of course, I went into the ring room. It probably would have been perhaps about 15 shillings. You start off in the ring room as a doffer.
Right.
That is when the bobbins are full,
Yeah.
the machine stops, and the doffers come on with a little can, as we called it, you know, a box like that,
Yeah.
fitted onto a rail, and they took the full ones off and put the empty tubes on,
Right.
like that all the way along, and then it'd start up again.
Right.
Yes.
Did
I
you-
think we had a week's holiday then. The mill wasn't far from the junction station, the Middleton Junction station,
Right.
and everyone used to go off on holiday, mostly to Blackpool.
Yeah.
It was. And every shop in the town would close. It was just like a ghost town.
Yeah.
And all the mills were, they used to call it Wakes Week.
Yeah.
So you'd have Oldham Wakes, because we were part of Oldham, so we'd have Oldham Wakes. And then you'd have Rochdale Wakes and Bolton. You know, they all had a different week to what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.